Right, now we're going to talk about something that I think will really help people understand the New Testament verses that attribute divine qualities to Jesus and what that really means. And again, I need to go back to the Old Testament to see how it all fits, or where a New Testament author and also or New Testament author and reader from the New Testament period, what their perspective would have been on this. And this will start to explain a little bit about what we talked about earlier, about how the Old Testament is very clear that God is one and that you can't see God, and that the very idea of the Trinity and the Incarnation are contradictory to what the Old Testament teaches. And this will start to help to explain why the New Testament, with the understanding what the Old Testament says about those other things, why the New Testament has verses that attribute divine qualities to Jesus. So I'm going to talk about the representative gods of the Old Testament and what that means. Let's look at Psalm chapter 45. To the chief musician Shoshanim, for the sons of Korah, Maskil, a song of loves. My heart is inditing a good matter. I speak of the things which I have made touching the king. My tongue is a pen of a ready writer. Thou art fairer than the children of men. Grace is poured upon thy lips. Therefore God has blessed thee forever. Gird thy sword upon thy thigh, O Most High, Mighty, with thy glory and thy majesty. And in thy majesty ride prosperously because of truth and meekness and righteousness. And thy right hand shall teach thee terrible things. Thine arrows are sharp in the hearts of the king's enemies, whereby the people fall under thee. So this is talking about the king. And in verse 6 it says, Thy throne, O God, is forever and ever. The scepter of thy kingdom is a right scepter. Thou lovest righteousness and hatest wickedness. Therefore God, thy God, hath anointed thee with the oil of gladness and above thy fellows. So here in the Psalms it refers to a king as God. In verse 6, Thy throne, O God, is forever. And it's addressing this king. And continuing on in verse 8, All thy garments smell of myrrh and aloes and cassia, out of the ivory palaces, whereby they have made thee glad. King's daughters were among thy honorable women. Upon thy right hand did stand the queen in gold of Ophir. Hearken, O daughter, and consider, and incline thine ear. Forget also thine own people, and thy father's house. So shall thy king greatly desire thy beauty, for he is thy Lord, and worship thou him. And the daughter of Tyre shall be there with a gift. Even the rich among the people shall entreat thy favor. And we're including all this just to make it very clear to anyone that would want to try to read into this. Oh, this is talking about Jesus in a figurative sense or something like that. The original person addressed here is a very human king. It's undoubtedly a very human king in the original context, even if the New Testament authors later attribute or gave a secondary meaning of Jesus. Because this king has a wife. He has a queen. This is in his palace, and enemies, and fighting enemies with arrows and such. This is, in the original context, is definitely not talking about Jesus. The New Testament authors saw a foreshadowing of Jesus in it, but this is a very human king, and he is referred to as God in verse 6. The king's daughter, and his daughter too, so his wife and her daughter, both things that Jesus did not have, is all glorious within. Her clothing, or the king's daughter is all glorious within. Her clothing is of wrought gold. She shall be brought unto the king in raiment of needlework. The virgins of her companions that follow her shall be brought unto thee. With gladness and rejoicing shall they be brought. They shall enter into the king's palace. Instead of thy fathers shall be thy children, whom thou makest princes in all the earth. I'll make thy name to be remembered in all generations. Therefore shall the people praise thee forever and ever. The above chapter represents a very beautiful portrait of a king appointed by God. Notice verses 6 and 7. Verse 6 refers to the king as God. Verse 7 refers to God as the king's God. The context of this chapter is clearly an earthly king complete with queen and children. So does verse 6 mean that it refers to the king as God? So what does it mean when it refers to the king as God? More importantly, how does this relate to the divine attributes given to Jesus, including quote in Hebrews chapter 1, verses 8 and 9, which quotes this chapter to explain Jesus' relationship to God. But unto the Son he saith, Thy throne, O God, is forever and ever, and a scepter of the righteousness is the scepter of thy kingdom. Thou hast loved righteousness and hated iniquity. Therefore God, even thy God, hath anointed thee with the oil of gladness above thy fellows. I was quoting verses 6 and 7 from Psalm chapter 45 that we just read. And this, in Hebrews chapter 1, is used to explain Jesus' position. So it's making reference back to an earthly king, and it does say the throne of God is forever and ever. Why does it refer to that original earthly king as God? Let's look at Moses in Exodus chapter 7, verse 1. And the Lord said unto Moses, See, I have made thee a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother should be thy prophet. Here God refers to Moses as a god, and says that it's because God made Moses a god. In the context of the verse, we clearly see that Moses is referred to as a god, not because he's actually a deity, but because he's been appointed by God to be his representative. This is neither the first nor the last time that God's representative is referred to as God. Let's look at Jacob's encounter with the stranger in Genesis chapter 32, starting verse 24. And Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of the day. And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joints as he wrestled with him. And he said, Let me go, for the day breaketh. And he said, I will not let thee go, except thou bless me. And he said, What is thy name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, Thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. For as a prince thou hast power with God, and with men, and hast prevailed. And Jacob asked him, and said, Tell me, I pray thee, thy name. And he said, Wherefore is it that thou dost ask my name? And he blessed him there. And Jacob called the name of Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. So Jacob refers to the stranger that he wrestles with as God, and says, For I have seen God face to face. Jacob refers to the stranger as God, but the scripture informs us that it is an angel. Hosea chapter 12, verse 4. Yea, he hath power over the angel, and hath prevailed. He wept and made supplication unto him. He found him in Bethel, and there he was spoken with, and there he has spoke with us. Another example is when an angel appears to Samson's parents in Judges chapter 13, verse 21 and 22. But the angel of the Lord did no more appear to Manoah and to his wife. Then Manoah knew that he was an angel of the Lord. And Manoah said unto his wife, We shall surely die, because we have seen God. So we see in the Old Testament that someone is appointed by God to represent him. That person takes on divine authority, and he's even referred to as God, even though they are not an actual deity. This is very important to evaluating the verses in the New Testament that attribute divine aspects to Jesus. We must keep this Old Testament perspective in mind when reading the New Testament, because that's the perspective that it was written from. If we come to the New Testament with our 21st century concepts of Jesus as part of a Trinity, then we are reading into the text. We're not reading what the text actually meant. The only way to understand what the New Testament actually meant is to see how the Old Testament uses these phrases.